I want to welcome you. I want to welcome you to the 2015 election issues format. If you will please be seated as quickly as you can, we would appreciate it. And of course, while you're being seated, you always have to get that message. Please turn off your cell phones. And now that I have your attention, thank you very much. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Ned Knurk. I'm president of Futuro McAllen. And over here is Gabby Jones. And Gabby.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. And I'd like to say a big thank you as well to Futuro McAllen for helping us. And we're co-hosting. We're so grateful for the opportunity. And have a great evening.
Okay, and one of the things that I want to do first is to take a moment. I got a message yesterday from Bob McLeish's daughter, and she told me that one of our founders of Futuro McAllen, Bob McLeish, a lawyer that many of you knew Penny, his wife, who was a teacher at Cherryland, who died a few years ago. We lost Bob yesterday. He had been in hospice very, very briefly. Bob was one of our really special people, he and Penny both, in Futuro McAllen. And I would ask that you take a moment in silent memory and prayers for the McLeish family. McAllen has lost a very dear citizen. Thank you for sharing my memories and my affection for Bob and Penny McLeish. And now, I think we're ready to get started. And I would like to mention to all the participants, we are so glad to have you here. And I do want to tell you that when you do get up here, please make sure you keep the microphone close to your mouth, because you can't hear you, and the people in the back won't be happy with you. Now, the people in the back, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. If you can't hear at any time, would you please raise your hand, and that will alert the people up here that they'd better talk louder, put the mic up to their face. And anyway, we do want you to hear, so please raise your hand if you can't hear for any reason. Now, let's see. Oh, and please hold your applause during the discussions, because that will give us more time for more questions. Gabby, have I forgotten anything? Think we're ready? Well, then I think we're ready to introduce our moderator, and we are very, very pleased to have our own Sam Garcia to moderate this first portion. And it will be on the issues that are important not only to citizens of District 1 in the runoff, but also, of course, to citizens of McAllen. So the District 1 runoff election moderator, Sam Garcia.
Thank you, Nedra. As Nedra said, I'm Sam Garcia. I'm here to moderate the District 1 debate and discussion for reasons beyond my control. We are without the full complement of candidates today, but nevertheless, we're going to press forward and as if nothing happened. And so, in thinking about how this was going to go, candidate Cortez, I was thinking of a SWOT analysis, just as it related to this race, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats facing District 1 and McAllen in general. So So, you know, I figured we could either do have about a dozen or so topics to discuss. We could either do that, or we have about 20 minutes, so if you prefer, we could do a staring contest. So,
Well, I'm here at your request to answer questions and trying to try as much as I can about my knowledge and experience to let the voters of District Number 1 make informed decisions. So I'm going to let you decide. But before we do that, I want to take the opportunity of the privilege of having the microphone, because I am an accountant and I hold the legal profession, the accounting profession in very high esteem. And I see doctors who are better at doctors, architects, engineers, and everybody, so I can be politically correct. But the decedent, Mr. McLeish, was also a CPA. He was the auditor for the county for a long, long time. So he will be terribly missed, and he was an outstanding treasurer for this area. So I had to plug the accountant. Right? Grayson, thank you.
okay. Well, why don't we jump right into it, and I'm just gonna sort of fire some stuff out there and
Sure.
get your take on it. First question. Aside from the general issues and concerns that are common to all of McAllen, be it jobs, safety, clean city, we pave roads, etc., what issues are specifically unique to District 1 that may not necessarily align or harmonize with the rest of the city? And how does the commissioner from District 1, how would they go about bridging that gap?
Sure. Well, I think we have two, well, maybe not unique, but certainly unique at this particular time in District Number 1, and that's the emergence of the Tres Lagos, which is a master plan community. And this is one of the first times the city of McAllen made an agreement with a developer of this size to be able to stimulate the growth in the northern part of McAllen. This is going to be a new challenge, because this is a new experience for the city of McAllen. And how well we do it or how poor we do it are going to decide what the future is going to be. I believe that the Rio Grande Valley is growing at a rate of 3%. So we have a do-nothing plan or do-something plan. We're going to pretty much grow 3%. The question is, where is this 3% going to grow? So those communities that give the best value for the dollar of the consumer is going to be a higher achiever than the one that doesn't compete. So for us to have Tres Lagos here is going to give us an extra item in the menu to be able to compete with those people that want to find a home, want to place, want to find a business, to go into business in an area. And this is a master plan community, which means that they're going to have a mixed use. They're going to have residential, commercial, all this kind of thing. So right now, that's the only unique part in McAllen that's happening. It's happening in District Number 1. The other one, of course, is very, very important. It's going to be debated for a long time, and that's the emergence of the medical school. And where is it going to be located? Also, the growth in the UT Rio Grande Valley. A lot of that growth in the medical area is happening in northeast McAllen, which also happens to be the northern part of District Number 1. How we manage ourselves, how to do that, is going to be very, very important, because as you know, the more jobs we have, the more economic development we have in a certain area, the more traffic, the more other issues that we're going to be having that we're going to have to manage, properly. There's always also, the debate of, are there incentives out there? Is there incentives? Who do we give them to? If you talk to a pioneer family in McAllen that's been here all their lives and says, hey, I started with nothing and I did pretty good working all my lives and working hard, investing in the city of McAllen, and then some new guy comes in from somewhere and you're giving them incentives. Well, the facts and circumstances today are different than they were 50 or 60 years ago. So you have to take it on a case-by-case basis, so you can determine by you giving those incentives, then what value do we expect in return for those incentives. How we manage those things are going to be also important to District Number 1, because I, as a commissioner, ought to have some flexibility of what we're able to offer a prospect that wants to come either do real estate development, commercial development in McAllen. However, even though it's not necessarily unique only to District Number 1, we have to solve our security problems. We have to solve our illumination problems in our walking trails. We have to solve how we keep our citizens safe. And right now, some of our walking trails are not safe. I mean, people sometimes are afraid to be there because it's not illuminated properly. They don't have a way to contact security. So those are some of the challenges that I see as your next city commissioner for District Number 1 is going to be faced with.
Let me see if I can sort of piggyback on some of that. Give you a hypothetical situation. Wants to come into District 1. Say it's a new development, a multi-story development, and our zoning doesn't quite have the capacity to handle that, so it's going to require city commission approval. Let's say you happen to think it's a good idea, you happen to think it's going to be an asset, but for whatever reason, a loud but vocal and motivated opposition rises up to sort of voice their concerns. Does the city commissioner, how do you balance the difference between sort of responding to the immediate vicinity neighbor's needs and what you believe is actually better for the city? And what's the litmus test?
Sure, that's a great question. I want to pass it over to Commissioner Barletta over there to answer that question. Come on, Marcus. When all of you know that one time I was mayor, and the only time I really voted was when my commissioners couldn't agree. When there was a 3-3 vote, then I had to vote to break the tie. And that's not a lot of fun because immediately you have half of the people disagreeing with your decision anyway. So, well, here is why this election is so critically important. Because those are the tough decisions that we have to make. And it would be improper for me to say, well, you know what? I want to please people, and I'm going to go out there and take a survey and get a straw vote and see what the people want to do. Okay? Well, I have never found a very accurate way of taking a straw vote and finding out if that really is representative of all of the people. And just because I represent District Number 1 doesn't mean that my decisions won't affect the other portion of the city. So at the end of the day is my judgment, what do I think? So I have to tell you basically the values that I have as to why I want to be in government. Government is not about doing only what people that agree with you want you to do. It's about governing and servicing everyone, even the ones you disagree with. Okay? So here at the end of the day, what are the benefits that we're going to get if we were to approve that project, irregardless if we have citizen opposition? Does that make sense for the long-term future of McAllen? I would take that into consideration because our future is going to depend on how much money we have in the bank. Because if we don't have money in the bank, then we can't support all the amenities and all the things that we do. We can't keep you safe. We can't stop speeders and do all this kind of stuff, but we don't have money in the bank. However, every citizen here has a right. The reason that we were empowered to be a city and be a monopoly, because we are a monopoly. We're the only ones that can provide you with police service, fire protection, streets and drainage. We're the only ones that can do that. Is because we wanted to provide core services to all of our community at the lowest and best price. So as I weigh that information, and I weigh if there are other alternative areas where this development could go, then my decision is going to be based on a fact-specific issue. I cannot sit here and tell you and second guess myself what I'm going to do in a hypothetical situation. I have to wait until it actually happens. But that would be the process that I would use to help me make the right decision.
For better or worse, McAllen has a reputation for being a difficult city to do business in. It seems that the general consensus out there that regulations are at times excessively onerous, that city officials can sometimes be more of a hindrance than a help in bringing new developments to the city. How can an elected official have any effect on that portion of the city? And what is your sort of take on that?
I don't know how many hours did Joe spend coming up with his questions? Those are good questions. It's a two-side analysis. The first side of the analysis is what is the regulation? Then the second side of the analysis is how do we enforce it? So sometimes we have a problem that is not necessarily the problem of the regulation itself, because it could be a good regulation. It's the way we're enforcing it. Maybe we don't have properly trained people. Maybe we don't have enough people that really understand how to enforce the regulation. I have experience in that. My firm built an office, and we had already finished putting all of the bathroom facilities and whatever. And the inspector came over here and says, well, no, you have to have these automatic flushers, okay, and all of the things or whatever. So if somebody misinterprets some of these regulations, then some people feel that this is abusive and McAllen is over-regulated or whatever, but the problem is really in our people. So before I would start looking at our regulations, I want to make sure that all our employees are properly trained to properly regulate the regulations. Then one of the things that I want to do, and I want to suggest to Mayor Darling, okay, and maybe because the way that we get something to the agenda is either the mayor puts it in the agenda or two commissioners put it in the agenda. I'd rather go to Mayor Darling. He is our mayor and he's our leader. So I would like to recommend to him that we take a look at all of our regulations. You know, the state of Texas, not too many years ago, they had the Sunset Commission to really look at all the laws of the state of Texas to see if they were working for the intended purpose. Okay, I think McAllen needs to do that because, quite honestly, I do believe McAllen has regulations that have good intentions but are no longer needed, or we shouldn't have to be able to stimulate and be a catalyst to additional creation of jobs and businesses in our community.
Thank you. Speaking of Mayor Darling, Mayor Darling is a big proponent of regionalization and talks about that, and I know that that's a topic that's sort of an undercurrent to local city politics as of late. I want to ask a specific question as it relates to regionalization. Would you support efforts that would see the city of McAllen divest their interest in the bridges if those interests were to go into a joint Hidalgo County Bridge Consortium that would be run as a sort of unified entity? Would you support that?
Well, again, I need to have more evidence. And we do have two bridges. We have the Hidalgo Bridge and we have the Alcides Bridge, which belong to the city of McAllen. If I were to sell them for its proper value, then the citizens of McAllen are going to receive value for the asset that it has. Okay? And the value of an asset, by definition, is what are the future benefits that the owner of that asset is going to have adjusted for risk. So if the city of McAllen is going to get proper value, we were to sell it to a region, then if it helps the region, I wouldn't have a problem because we compensated the citizens of McAllen properly for the value they have. But if we're just going to simply transfer it and transfer our future revenues to someone else, then that's not only a no, that's a blank, blank no.
But another hypothetical. No, something I like to call sort of like a magic wand question. If you had a magic wand and you could, snap your fingers and make it happen, what piece of major infrastructure, capital improvement, do you think the city of McAllen needs, be it in District 1 or be it citywide?
The way that we finance everything in McAllen is we receive revenues, and the revenues we receive come from sales taxes, which in essence, any business in McAllen that generates a sales tax is our partner. We also tax people that own real estate. We receive profits from the bridge, and then we receive hotel occupancy. Those are basically the four core revenues that we have. And as what is happening here is McAllen used to have a 55% market share of all of the sales that occurred in Hidalgo County were occurring in McAllen. We have now gone to 45%. You say, God, that's bad. Well, it's really not bad. It's good because our neighbors are doing better. If you look at the sales that our neighbors are having, they're also doing better. So some of the sales that we lost went back to Edinburgh. Edinburgh is really not growing, they're just getting back what they lost to McAllen. So we have to be very careful as we move forward that we allow the science of business to dictate a lot of our decisions. And the science of business is that you have consumers that earn money and consume. So as you study the habits of a consumer, what you find is there's something that's called a leakage analysis. And that analysis says, look, you should be selling more of this in your area, and you're not, which means that you're someone else in San Antonio or Brownsville or Houston are getting sales that you should get. So as I look at the leakage of McAllen, one of the leakages that we have in McAllen not too many years ago, there was only 2. And I think I've said this before, and the first leakage was furniture. Believe it or not, people in McAllen were not buying as much furniture as they should. They were buying it somewhere else. And there were 2, construction materials. Construction materials, to me, it was pretty safe to say because most of them were in the outskirts of McAllen. What I am seeing is that when people have leisure time and money to pay on leisure time, they're not doing it too much in McAllen because the only thing that they can do in McAllen is really go dining because there's not too many venues for families to go out and do it. So I think the infrastructure that would be important to McAllen and to really solidify McAllen as the city of destination is to have wholesome recreation alternatives for families.
Would you support a policy in McAllen of using sort of passive incentives, tax reimbursements, for example, tax abatements, that encourage the private sector to build upward instead of outward, as sort of a blanket policy that says this is what McAllen stands for, and we would like to be a taller, more dense, compact city? Would you support? And even if you didn't understand 100% how it was going to affect everything, would you still support it?
Again, this questions are hypothetical, and I'm going to tell you that I believe that's going to be the next stage in McAllen's development is we're going to have to go up. I was not necessarily for expanding too much our territorial jurisdictions because it's expensive to spread out at single levels because you need more fire protection, more street, more police, more of everything. And the income that you get from a household, you know, the bond people are going to tell you an average household of $100,000 pays $420 to the city of McAllen because our tax rate is 42. So for $420, we have to provide you fire protection, streets, lights, police, or whatever. You don't have to be a master's degree guy from A&M to know that that's not a lot of money to provide all those services. So to me, I think that I would be more interested in knowing what does the demand side of the equation say? Is there a demand for that? And if there is, then how can we be the first to do it, and how can we, catalyze that development here? So to me, I would have to look at it for the statistics on that. I believe that whoever does a high-rise luxury condo in McAllen or starts going up, it's going to be very successful because I think there's a demand for that.
I could recommend a decent architect. Candidate Cortez, I thank you for your time. And before we're done, I just do want to ask one final question that's very near and dear to my heart. As I was doing sort of the research for the questions today, statistically speaking, per capita, District 1 is second only to District 4 in terms of beards per capita. So what would you do to diminish the discrimination that
I was sending back to the McAllen Independent School District for more education. Okay, so here's what's happening right now. We're making a change. This is what happens backstage when they close the curtain
and they send some guy out front to sing a song or have his dogs jump through hoops or whatever. You're not supposed to see this. Okay, so we're changing everything up for part 2 of the debate tonight. Part 2 will deal with the bond issue.
And of course, I'm supposed to introduce the famous or infamous, famous Neil Canales, who is going to be the moderator for this portion of our bond issue. And we feel this is very, very important. We are presenting both the pro and the con. And I also want to mention what I forgot to mention before. Our esteemed timekeeper down here is Aaron Seal. Once again, thank you, Aaron.
Now we're putting your names in front, so everybody has a seat.
Daddy? Marcus, I'm sorry, you need to move over. Okay, Gina.
Right, and when the music stops, we remove a chair.
Okay, and if everyone's reasonably comfy now, I will turn this over to Neil.
Okay, the microphone goes down there. Now the microphones will be on the table there. And so the whole issue here is McAllen ISD, McAllen Independent School District, is on the ballot for May the 9th, Saturday, is an issue that we have to decide as voters. Can they sell bonds for $297 million for needed improvements and issues all over the school district? Now, there's a lot of things that need to be done. I know there's at least 33 schools. There's 33 teachers a year. And if you divide that up, it's like $8 million a school, but I don't think it's going to be done that way. There is a plan. Maybe we're going to find out about what the need is and what the money might be used for in this discussion tonight, hopefully so. And as you heard, we have 2 people here to speak for the bond issue, and we have 2 people to speak against it. So we have the spendthrifts and the cheapskates. You just can't win, can you? And so, now, we also have a panel. I'm going to introduce everybody now. The people asking the questions of the 4 people up here are seated to the left side of the room for those of you out in the audience. Okay? They are members of Futuro McAllen. And we start off on the far left over there is Davis Rankin, who started off as a print reporter, got into television news, went as far as CBS in New York City, came back to Valley, been on KURV ever since, and can be heard virtually every weekday afternoon, arguing with whichever co-host he happens to be with. Next to him, Monica Stewart, now businesswoman, very involved. McAllen Downtown, of course, the Futuro McAllen Border Trade Alliance, that's kind of a big thing across the entire U.S. on the southern part. If you can take a list of activities and the important things happening in our community, close your eyes and throw a dart, chances are she's involved. And of course, there's Chris Artis. Now, Chris Artis, retired school teacher, and for years has been a weekly columnist in our local newspapers, dealing with education and some other issues. So these are the people that are going to be asking the questions. The questions are predetermined. They have been selected, screened actually, from questions sent in by Futuro McAllen members. So there won't be, and the Leadership McAllen Alumni Association, the banners are up here. So the questions have been screened. There will be no questions such as what's the real color of your hair, or favorite color, favorite flavor of ice cream. And we don't have to say who sent that, what to do. Okay, now as we heard before, the important thing is to keep things going. It's going to be quite simple. I will direct one of the questioners to ask one of the answerers a question. And I have a system here to where everybody gets to answer the same number of questions as everybody else, and it goes back and forth. Now, it starts off with a 1-minute intro from each one of you. So everybody, you have 1 minute to get started. Now, again, we talked about Aaron Seal. Aaron, go ahead. You see the guy with the signs up here in front? He is your best friend tonight. You don't have to worry about the issue in your head and keeping time at the same time. He will keep you there, and just look down, there you are, you know when to summarize. And it works out that way. Now, if you start going over a little bit too much, then I will pipe in and I have to stop you at that particular time. So we start off, each one of you has 1 minute to give a summary of an opening introductory statement, and then we will start with the panel, the questioning panel, and we'll just go around until our time is up, or until Ned starts shaking her fist at us. And then at that particular time, there'll be a summary from each side. Not from each one of you, but from each side. There are 2 people on the side of the con, 2 people on the side of the pro. So you have to decide which one of you will deliver the 1.5 minute summary at the end. And you can determine that any which way you want, arm wrestling, or rock, paper, scissors, or the new rock, paper, scissors, lizard, spot, whichever one you want to use. Okay, so I'll tell you what, are you ready? Okay, I'll tell you what, so we'll take this from the viewpoint of the people in the audience, looking this way, starting from the left. We'll start with, okay, let's introduce our people now. We have Mark Walker, who's a McAllen attorney. And next to him, another McAllen attorney, Marcus Barrera, as we heard, a former city commissioner. And we have Gina Milan, who is a McAllen attorney. And Danny Gerwitz, who is a McAllen attorney. Okay, so if it gets technical, you'll have to explain things for us, okay? In case there, yeah, it is equally balanced. Either you like it or you don't, or both, whichever. Okay, so let's starting up with Mark Walker. You have 1 minute as an opening statement.
My side is against the bond issue for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a whole lot of money to impose upon the taxpayer at this time. We believe that we need to spend smart, not just spend. You don't just go tax people without a really firm, understandable, and committed taxpayer base. We're facing a cascade of new taxes from South Texas ISD, the Regional Mobility Authority, the Healthcare District. There's just a whole cascade coming to us. We have some current problems now with the maintaining of the McAllen facilities. The same problem is going to continue despite this bond because there's no plan in this bond to address it. We can't afford to maintain our facilities. The only thing we're swapping out are the facilities. We still have to maintain our facilities, and this bond program does not provide for a plan to continue the maintenance. We have the problem of priorities. What is most important to our school district? Who's deciding that? We have lighted LED marquee signs in front of every school. We have iPads. We have new AstroTurf. There has been no commitment to the electorate of what is going to come first. I see my time's up.
Thank you very much. And now, 1 minute opening statement from Marcus Barrera.
Okay, I'll talk fast. When I found out that I was on the FFAC committee, and I participated until I got to a point where I wasn't going to be a sheep anymore, because that's what I felt like on the FFAC committee, was that everybody was being led to the slaughter. Okay, and that's exactly how I felt. I felt like there was a predetermined amount that we were getting to, and that's unacceptable to me. When I tried to interject comments, I was told that, look, you can't consider costs, you can't consider politics. Go to the facilities, write down what you think needs to be fixed or added, and then we're going to monetize it, which Jacobs Engineering tried to do. And then from there, we were going to come up with numbers. Well, I ran outside when I heard the $440 million figure because I wanted to see what asteroid had fallen and destroyed our schools. Because that's what they're saying happened. Your schools are destroyed. They're worthless. They're not worthless. All 3 of my kids go to these schools. They're good schools. Do they need improvements? Yes, but they don't have to have facilities all throughout the district brand new.
Thank you very much. And now, 1 minute. I forgot to bring that up.
Please hold your applause so we'll have more time for questions.
Yeah, it'll eat up a lot of the time tonight. Okay, Gina Milan.
It's Gina Millen. I'm proud to be here to inform about the McAllen ISD bond, and I'm proud to promote its passage. We worked very hard for 18 months. We were not led by sheep. We're actually all very independent-minded, intelligent people. And we all came to the same conclusion, that the problems that we face are not an issue of maintenance or mismanagement. The problems that we face stem from the fact that our legislature has underfunded us for 20 years, and our kids here in McAllen and all through the valley have been shortchanged for 20 years. And people ask me why I'm so passionate about it, and it's because I didn't know this was happening, and frankly, I feel ashamed that I didn't know it was happening, and I didn't do something about it before. But now, our group has come up with a comprehensive solution that addresses every school, makes every school equitable, and gives every kid the opportunity that they deserve in McAllen, Texas. Our numbers were scrubbed 5 different ways to make sure that they were accurate and that they were something that could actually be accomplished within a short amount of time. Facilities matter, and this bond will fix our facilities.
And the final, again, please, with the applause. Final opening statement from Danny Gerwitz.
I'm supporting the bond. It is wildly unpopular to show up and ask people to increase their taxes, as you can tell by the cheering when you have someone just put down a notebook and say no new taxes. It's easy to support that. But this group isn't about sound bites or rhetoric. If you're here, it's because you're about facts and analysis. So what I promise to do today, because I can't advocate in 30 seconds for why I support the bond, what I promise to do today is answer the questions with facts. If I don't have the facts and I have to use projections or estimates, I'll tell you what the source of my projections or estimates are. And if I'm asked a question I don't know the answer to, I'll admit that I don't know the answer, and I'll work to get you the answer. But rhetoric and sound bites are not what we need to base our decisions on for this election. It's too easy to do that. That's never been what McAllen's about. It's not what it's about today.
Thank you very much. Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The way we're going to do this, our panel will be directed to ask a question to our panel of answerers. Okay, first question comes from Davis Rankin and is directed to Mark Walker.
Mark, you indicted and convicted the method in which they came up with the list of needs. What would you do if they put you in charge? How would you handle it?
Number one, I would put some CPAs on that committee like Richard Cortez was just talking about. We need some business people. I had 2 McAllen CPAs look through that list of FFAC members, and there was not a single one on there that either of them recognized. I especially don't know why there wasn't one on the finance committee. I think the process went as Mark has said. There was a predetermined outcome. The numbers weren't taken into account until later. Number one, I would prioritize what our needs are. Fix the major problems. They say that they need in the bond issue $36 million for equipment and system upgrades. Hey, we got $36 million there. Let's fix these equipment problems. That's not $300 million. So, second thing I would do is figure out how we got here. How do we let our facilities get into this condition in such a relatively short period of time? There's systemic problems with priorities and planning. We need to find those solutions first after we identify the problems. Thank you.
Next question comes from Monica Stewart and it is directed to Gina Millen.
According to the MISD website and some other sources, the remaining balance from the 1997 bond and the $97.85 million bond, 2005 bond, it still has a remaining balance of $91,720,000. This amount will be owed on top of the proposed $297 million bond, if passed, bringing the total debt close to $389 million. What is a repayment plan, and how do we avoid this from reoccurring every couple of years?
First of all, it is incorrect to say that the balance from the $98 million bond in 2005 is still close to that $91 million figure. The accurate number that we learned as FFAC members is that that amount is closer to about $6 million. It's almost paid off. The district always has some debt, just like every other school district in the state. Thankfully, McAllen ISD has the lowest bond debt of any of the school districts in this region. And so it's incorrect to say that all of that is debt from the 98 bond. That bond, every project was completed on time and under budget, and it has been repaid in 10 years, even though it was projected to have taken longer because of favorable interest rates. So I'm getting a 15-second notice, but when you buy a house, you don't just borrow $98 million and then expect to pay $98 million back. There's interest. And so certainly there will be
Thank you
some
very much.
interest that will be owed on this bond.
Next, Chris Artis will ask a question of Marcus Bonetto.
Actually, Neil, I have one for somebody from both sides, please.
Yeah, we're going to bounce back and forth.
Right. So I'll have.
Not a problem.
In the world of hashtags, several pro-bond individuals are using the hashtag "there is no other way." I have seen several people opposed to the bond recently using the hashtag "there is another way." Why is there no other way? Or what is another way?
Marcus?
Sure, there is another way. You can do it responsibly, okay? What you can do is you can select the schools.
Microphone.
What you can do is select the schools objectively by age or by need, and then do architectural plans, hire an architect, actually get architectural plans down, then cost it out. And after you cost it out, if it's too much, then you do value engineering. Example number one, ERO Architects did the Dow County Courthouse. It came in at $157 million. They sent it for a peer review. It came back $50 million over the amount that it should have been. That's part of what's happening with the McAllen School District. They did not even send it to an architect to cost out, for example, McAllen High School. Let's design it. Let's actually determine what it's going to cost and do value engineering. And we'll do that for the buildings that we need. I'm not against a bond. I'm against this bond, the largest bond in South Texas history by more than double. The next highest one was $180 million for the levee project. This is outrageous. It needs to be reviewed.
Okay. Now, what we're going to do here is, when we get back around, because you're going to mess with my chart. Okay, so you're going to get to answer that question. But possibly, because next question comes from Davis to you. Would you like him to answer that?
But she asked a question, which was, yeah, aren't we supposed to answer why, what's the hashtag? There is no other way.
Yeah, there is no other way.
Soundbite I don't like. Here's why. If you take Marcus's position and say you break up the $300 million into three $100 million bonds, the first one is sold now, the second one is sold in 3 years, and the third one is sold 3 years after that. With bond rates the way they're going, it's going to cost you about $180 million more to do it that way than if you did $300 million now. There's no dispute about the need, but if you stagger it like that, you're going to pay a whole lot more in interest. Number two, you can't do architectural engineering now. It's about 15% of your cost. What Marcus has recommended is, for the first $100 million, that before the bond passes, we hire architects and engineers at a cost of $15 million to design it, without knowing whether the bond passes. It is not another way. That is a criticism of our plan. It is not an alternate.
Okay. Monica Stewart, do you have a question for Mark Walker? It's my chart, I'm sorry. Y'all just obey, okay?
Approximately 38% of all ad valorem taxes collected in McAllen, Texas are paid by commercial properties. Many land and business owners have expressed concerns of the domino effect if this bond passes. Example, rise in apartment rents, rising rents of businesses that are having difficulty in times of paying current tax rate, and customers having to pay higher prices for products. How do you respond to these individuals' concerns in reference to the bond?
And that goes to both sides.
Clearly, the tax rates are not impacting only the wealthier people. An increased tax rate is going to affect the lesser income people and the fixed income people to the extent they're not 65 and older today. It's going to affect them more because it's going to be a higher proportion of their income. So when you're saying, oh, we're just taxing all the big businesses, 40% are businesses, that's not true because the people that pay for the products get driven out of our city because they can't afford the overheads. It's going to impact not just the wealthier people, but also the less wealthy people.
Okay. Gina, could you also respond?
Sure. What I want to know is how is it in FAR they can pay higher taxes than we'll ever get even after the bond and the TRE pass? How is it that they can do it and we can't? How is it that they can continue to offer their kids the best facilities, but we don't do the same for our children? Are we really ready to be second rate in our region because some people don't want to pay higher taxes? That's what I want to know. It is not a huge increase considering that in 2005, the school district tax rate was $1.61. We are down at $1.04 right now. And this will only increase us after the bond to $1.33. So we will still be well below what we were paying in 2005 as a community. So I don't buy it at all that our community cannot handle this kind of tax increase. And I also don't buy it that McAllen people are okay with having the facilities that we have when everyone else in the region has already improved with bonds.
Okay, thank you. That was, hey, come on. Let's use the time for the talking. Davis, could you please ask a question of Marcus?
My call. Is the root of this, or is a big part of this that you guys just don't trust the school trustees and the school administration?
No, I think there's a little bit of misguidance, okay? You have some school board members that have never dealt with a bond before. Some have, but this bond, let me just tell you, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. It's $440 million. James Bonsa came and gave a presentation and said, $297 million is the first bond. If we pass that, and when we pass that, $143 million is coming in September. So let's just call a duck a duck. It's $440 million, okay? Let me give you a perspective of how much that is. This library, okay, which we did using the method that I told you about earlier, okay, cost $20 million, okay, and that's not including the site cost, just the building. You can build 4.5 libraries for what they want for one Mac High, $97 million. I can't find a school in the state of Texas that costs $97 million.
Do we get to respond? Is that for both of us?
Yes, let's do it. Sounds good.
You need to check your sources. The sources that we all use, there are lots of schools in the state that are more expensive than that. It's a matter of perspective. I think Mark and Mark both were for the recent bond that passed for the baseball fields. That's $15 million. 2,000 kids use it. At best, those kids will play 30 games a year. That's 30 hours a year, 2,000 kids. That's 60,000 person hours a year for use for $15 million. In this bond, you've got 25,000 kids in the district. They use their schools 8 hours a day. In the first day, you get 200,000 person hours of use. So you get value out of this bond before lunch on the first day of school than you relative to what we passed for the baseball fields. And I'm for the baseball fields, but you got to invest in your schools too, and that's what the bond does.
Okay, very good. Now, Monica, could you ask a question of Mark Walker, please?
For both sides.
Start with Monica.
How did the bond go, I'm going to follow up on Marcus's comment, how did the bond go from $440 million to $297 million by the time the board called for the bond? Did the needs change, or is it expected to get the remaining money from the TRE?
Well, I don't think anybody would argue that the needs changed. I think the politics and the presentations and the perception of the politics and the presentation changed. They're still going to be asking, as Marcus said, it's a duck. It's a $440 million duck. They can't do with the $297 million what they say they're going to do unless they get the extra $143 million with the tax ratification election, increasing our tax rates, which, by the way, would be permanent, not a 30 or 40-year amortization.
It has never been a secret that the bond package and the TRE package totals $440 million because that is what the need is. The recommendation formula came from a Jacobs assessment that fixed all of the broken things in every one of our 46 facilities. The second part was square footage adjustments to address growth and different needs that exist today that didn't exist 30 or 40 years ago. The last part of the formula was life cycle costs, things that we know that are going to break within the next 5 years. What they did is they figured out a way to reduce the debt. They reduced it to $297 by taking out the life cycle costs and putting that in the TRE. They also took out furniture, fixtures, and equipment, things that you don't want to finance over 30 years because you just shouldn't do that. That is what the TRE is. There is no secret. These guys act like there was something deceptive going on. If you get on the MISD website, every school has a breakdown that shows you exactly what the bond is going to pay for, exactly what the TRE is going to pay for. And everything that's planned for the bond can happen even without the TRE. But
Thank you.
we get less
Thank you.
than if we use the
Your
TRE
time
as
is
well.
up. Okay, Chris, do you have a two-part question?
I do.
You do. Okay, start with Danny and we'll go to Mark Walker.
Okay, fine. So one of the most oh, Marcus? You said Mark Walker. Okay.
No, I said start with-
Marcus, one of the most common...
Excuse me, no, I said start with Danny and then go to Mark Walker.
Danny,
We're all happy. We'll answer all the questions if you want us to. I don't, the kind
That
of
would be
random
great.
nature of how we're doing
They're
it.
lawyers, yeah.
okay. So one of the most commonly asked questions still is why was Sherryland able to build a new high school for much less than the FFAC's estimates to completely renovate McAllen High School? Danny, for those who have not heard or read the explanation, can you please address this? And for Marcus and Mark, do you accept this explanation, why or why not?
And Mark Walker put in his letter to the editor that the cost is $41 million. Simply not true. We did a Freedom of Information Act request. We got the cost from Sherryland. It was $55 million. That's in 2012. You run that to 2017, that 55 becomes, I think, $62 million. That school only has 1,300 kids. If they want to build the size of Mac High, which has 2,000, they're going to have to add a new classroom wing. Then there are differences. So if you just compare apples to apples, that's $72 million for Sherryland, for that school. $61 million in this bond for Mac High, which I think has about 170,000 new square feet. It's not a good comparison. In addition, there are things that we would put in this school that are judgment calls. For example, in the band hall, we'd run brick all the way to the top so that they don't hear it next door. In Sherryland, they didn't do that. We actually toured the facility. They were very nice about it. Very pleasant. Superintendent of facilities people, they have a great gym there. If we added a gym like that here, we'd be skewered by everybody. So apples to apples, this is lower cost for more kids than what Sherryland did, and should be a better facility when it's finished.
I don't buy it. Mac High is an existing school. It has a foundation. It has walls. It has a roof. It has a gym. It has bathrooms. We're talking about a renovation and remodel. Why would it cost more to remodel a school that exists and that Jacobs Engineering, in their report to the district, said was in fine shape, structurally sound, is expected to last another however many decades? So I don't buy it. It's, as Marcus stated before, it's funny business with the numbers. They're projecting their wishes and desires, and then they're converting it to dollars. You need to go into it with a budget, what needs to be done with the priorities, and then you budget it out, figure out what we can bear.
Okay, Davis. Question for both sides?
I think I saw Javier Villalobos here earlier. He may have gone. But I'm assuming you all have at least read the monitor coverage of the lawsuit that will be heard in part tomorrow at 2 Edinburgh. In it, he accuses, he says there was a conspiracy 2 years ago to not do maintenance, to make more apparent the need for the bond issue. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, can we have Marcus and Gina, because they were.
That's fine.
Me
I think both of you.
Both of you, please.
Yes, that's fine. Is there any truth to, he's alleging what he calls a civil conspiracy. Is there any truth to all this?
That I don't know about, but what I do know is I have the payment certificate for Sherryland High School, Pioneer High School, and if anybody wants to come see it, it's a payment certificate from DESCON, Texas DESCON. It's $41.101 million. So if anybody wants to come see it, it's right here. You can do it as cheap, you can build Mac High as cheaply as Sherryland Pioneer. I was told that they were building to a lower standard, they were building a metal building. In the Sherryland, I checked, I went and talked to the Sherryland School Board, and they were offended by that. They said, we spent time and effort to do this school right, and McAllen can do the same thing. Don't sell yourself short. Let me tell you something about perspective, because I want y'all to understand the perspective of what $97 million is. McAllen High School, they want $97 million. Memorial High School, $97 million. You can build the convention center, which cost us $38 million, and the Performing Arts Center for $45 million, and still have about $10 million left.
Thank you. Okay, Gina?
Do you still want me to answer the
Yes.
question that you asked? I don't even remember what it was, frankly. It's about the lawsuit.
Have you read, what's your response to his?
The lawsuit has absolutely no merit. It is nothing but a bunch of lies and someone who wants to stay relevant in the media because he lost his election. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And if you want to talk about a waste of taxpayer money, you can look at Javier Villalobos, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's costing our taxpayers money because our school district is having to defend a frivolous lawsuit, and I have no doubt that MISD is going to be successful in this lawsuit. As to Sherry Pioneer, Marcus is wrong. It was $55 million. They did $41 million with Descon. They got up to $55 million on their own. We went, we toured, and they told us that. There are differences in the building materials, tremendous differences. It's a nice school, that we're not knocking it, but Mac High is different. It's built on an existing site, not a green field. It is completely different, like Danny says. It's apples and oranges. You can't make the comparison, and it's for twice the number of students, practically, that Sherry Pioneer was built for.
Okay, Monica, you have a question for both sides, or is it for one person?
We're continuously going to have to deal with new buildings and maintenance in our buildings. That's not going to go away. A new building this year will be an old building next year and antiquated thereafter. How do we propose to pay for these buildings continuously along the way? What is our maintenance plan, or how do we continue doing this without being back here in a year or two dealing with another bond, having to pay for our expenses?
Okay, con side, you go first, because they went last.
Well, I think that's our whole point, is there hasn't been any plans or arrangements to do that. If the TRE passes, they say that's the solution. We're going to build all these new buildings with no additional provisions for funding, maintaining, operating, repairing, having a sinking fund to replace facilities as they age. And unless the TRE passes, which will increase our taxes even more without any good planning, there is no way to do that. I want to address the issue where they said before that the state doesn't fund us enough money. Well, the state funds approximately, and I'm just using as rough numbers, $5,100 of each student's education. Local taxes provide for about another $3,000 or so. So there's $8,100. McAllen Independent School District accepts transfer students. They're telling us that the $8,100 is not enough to educate our kids, but they take these transfer students, only getting the state $5,100 reimbursement. So what's wrong with this picture? They're saying there's not enough money, yet they're only taking the $5,100 for new people.
That's time. Okay, Danny, you look like you're ready.
Right. It wasn't about transfer students, but I'll start with that. So if you have a school that can hold 500 kids and there's only 350 there, they run the same air conditioning, the same principal, the same fixed costs. So to the extent you can have kids from out of the district come there and you get their ADA from the state, their $5,000, the school district is much better off. That's exactly why every school district does it. That's the answer to that question. And it's only 2%. What they're trying to do is look at a 2% number to kill a $297 million bill. It's not fair, it's not right. There is a sinking fund. That's why the district is AA- rated. It's the highest category for bonds. That's why if we go out and buy the bond, it will be at the lowest rate. So there is a sinking fund. As to maintenance in particular, I don't know what your experience is, but mine is new house, new car, less maintenance. Old houses, old cars, more maintenance. So you can plan on having to spend a lot more, waste a lot more money in maintenance going forward on 40 or 50-year-old buildings than you would if you had new buildings, on roofing, on mechanical, on virtually every one of the big items in the school.
Thank you. Chris Hardis, next question.
Some have argued that the district should have waited and called for a tax ratification election, or TRE, first. Do you agree, and why or why not?
Yes, Marcus?
Let me just say one more thing about Sharyland Pioneer. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
That was the
$55
question.
million, Matt Kai will cost $50 million more, even if you say it's $55 million. You can build 2 of them. Okay, what was your question?
Should I repeat it?
No, you don't have to repeat it. The TRE should
Okay,
go first.
Marcus,
Why are you-
okay, hold on, that was not the question. That was not the answer to that particular question. Could we have the question again, please?
The chief asked about the TRE and if it should
Should
go
it
first.
go first?
Yes.
Why or why not?
Yes,
Okay.
because the TRE has a package for the teachers. And if you take the parent-teacher relationship in a child's education, that's number one. That's the number one predictor of a child's success. We need to pay our teachers an amount that's fair and an amount that's going to motivate them to teach our kids. We're in the bottom half of rankings in the state on school districts, okay? Now let me just say, the TRE should go first, and then, it should go first. If you're giving me the option first or second, it should go first because the teachers should come first.
And if we had come with the TRE first, they would have been here complaining that we shouldn't pass the TRE. Because the bottom line is that both of these guys live in neighborhoods with schools that are brand new. So they don't feel the pain of the kids on the south side that have kids that are going to schools that are not offered the same amenities on the north side. For me, it's an issue of equity. There has to be a system where a kid walks into school and they have the exact same amenities offered to them, whether they're north, south, east, or west. The TRE is a very important component, but it is a two-part solution to a huge problem that we face. And there's never been any dispute that one has to be tied to the other. Yes, we do need to pay our teachers more. Also, the bond, even though you can't use it for teacher compensation, when you make huge improvements to your buildings and you reduce your energy costs, you can use that money also to increase your teacher salaries. So it is a two-part process, and there's never been any attempt to try to keep that from the voters.
Okay,
Can I
next.
interject here?
No,
Both
hold
my
on.
kids went to Travis schools. I live in the Travis School District.
Okay, we
Both
can
my
answer
kids-
that. Okay, now, I know it gets interesting, does it not? Okay, so I'm going to ask you all to let's spend our time trying to get some answers out of these folks. And folks up here, you're going to have to answer the question that was asked. Next time around, we're just going to stop it and you lose your turn. Okay, Davis Rankin, you're next.
Go first this month, and then sorry. That's rude. No, please do not speak out now.
Davis Rankin.
You're right.
You all are asking for a bond increase. There's the tax ratification election, which you all say you're going to call one way or the other, which is not a majority. There is the prospective healthcare district, which is going to be back. The county says it wants to build a new courthouse, which may or may not mean a tax increase. They pledge not to do it, but we're back again into the trust issue. How do you all see a tax increase here working into all of that?
Whoa.
There's been one meeting, some guy said, have you considered you're raising taxes on some very poor people, not us in this room, of course, but some very poor people. Didn't you take that into consideration when you set the tax rate? My question is a little more global. I'm trying to think, how does the school district think this through in terms of coming up with a figure and how this will sit with the voters? And then they're thinking, maybe we're going to get hit later on if we go for this now. If they find it attractive, then they have to worry about the healthcare district.
Okay, Danny, would you take the lead and Mark Walker respond?
Well, you can't punish your education system because the county or the city have other needs they have to address, right? So if we have a bond for roads or anything, you can't punish the school system, the students, and the teachers by not improving that because you have others. There are priorities. Education is one of them. So irrespective of whether the hospital district, or the healthcare district, or the courthouse is up for election, McAllen has to invest in McAllen's kids so that we protect our property values. We increase the property values already that exist today, and so that our school district is competitive with not just the school districts around it, but across the state. We're trying to retain and attract the best kids and the best teachers, and that the county or the city have other priorities shouldn't cause us not to invest in our own schools. And I think the school board did consider that when they dropped it to 297. They certainly could have kept the number at 360 or 440 and also done a TRE.
And there's time. Mark Walker?
Well, I think they did think it through. They were going to be first on the ballot to try to get our taxes raised, and this 297, so as they've already admitted, there will be no other choice but to pass the TRE in order to keep these schools functioning. So I think they did think it through. Now, if you look at the actual proposal from them, it's $201 million for 21st century educational needs. I didn't know what that meant, so I went and looked at it, and it says they're going to create modern functional learning environments are the missing component in our schools. The transformation that you're hearing about is a transforming the learning environment of our schools into a 21st century learning environment. They have a video on the FFAC webpage. It tells what a 21st century learning environment is by this Vietnamese-born architect, Trong Le. And it says that schools' physical environments need to drastically change. I disagree. We need to create a new learning environment. I disagree. The teacher's role needs to change dramatically. I disagree. They say the teacher needs to be a coach, not a teacher. They need to blow up the classrooms, and so there's no walls, open lights, skylights. That worked well with the hail.
And there's the time. Okay, now, need a question for the boss lady over here. We have, take 7 minutes. It'll take 6 for the closing statement. Or no, it'll take 3, because we're only going to do 1 each. Time for one more question, okay. Let's, Chris, go ahead.
It's because I have a question that fits right with what Mark said. So I attended the 2 of the school board workshops, and I've attended several other meetings having to do with the bond. But when I was listening to a local radio station Monday, I actually heard Mark speak about this 21st century learning environment and addressing teaching and how the teachers wouldn't really teach anymore, the kids would teach themselves. And I was kind of caught off guard, actually, because I hadn't heard that in any of the discussions. And so I wanted to see if you would explain your concerns. I did see the video online, but I had not heard that as part of the bond discussion. So, can you please address how or if that whole learning style is directly related to the bond?
If you look at the website and you look at all the flyers that have been put out at all these town hall meetings that are informational only, not a sales job, the bond issue. And on this webpage, there's a video that they put on there. It's Trong Le, the architect, emulating the environment they're trying to create. Physical and learning environment needs to drastically change. It says we're creating a new learning environment. The role of the teacher is going to change drastically. They will become more of a guide and a mentor. Kids will have greater desire. And then you go further into Mr. Trong Le's philosophy of educational buildings, you get rid of walls. All discipline problems will disappear. It's just a bunch of utopian hooey. And that's what they're spending 2/3 of our bond money on, is to create this 21st century learning environment. What's the transformation to? If they're just fixing up the buildings, that's not a transformation. That's repair and upgrade. If they're transforming our buildings, I'm against it. I'm transforming our learning environments, I'm against it. It's a waste of our money, and this is an untried experiment on our kids.
There's time.
I have no idea what he's talking about because that was never discussed in any of the 100 meetings that we had over a period of 18 months. 21st century learning environments include flexible spaces for students to be able to work collaboratively. But our models for the bond were our schools that already exist in our district. Our models were Pettis, Hendricks, Fossum for junior highs. Those are not spaceship type schools. They're nice schools that are functional, they give the kids everything they need. If you've walked through those schools, you will see that they are nothing like what Mr. Walker is describing. He's describing a philosophy. We based our numbers on 21st century design, which includes good air quality, natural light, flexible spaces. We never contemplated having a cyber teacher or kids in charge or any of this nonsense that he's talking about. So if you agree that Pettis and Fossum are what our kids need, that's exactly what's contemplated across the district.
Thank you. Okay, we're down to it now. We have 3 minutes left. Okay, time for the closing statement. Again, each side gets 1.5 minutes. Now, have you all decided who's going to do one? Okay, are you ready over there? Yes. Are you ready on this side? Okay. Mark Walker, go ahead.
I think I'd like to focus on this 21st century educational needs in our closing, because that is 2/3 of this $300 million bond issue. Ms. Millen said that this was the 21st century learning environment was never discussed. Well, it's all over their literature for the bond issue. I think maybe it should have been discussed, and it wasn't. In fact, they've taken down now from the website that was first explained to us. The part of the 21st century learning environment is to have engaging exteriors, an outside look that will give the community pride in the schools. We've all seen these diagrams of 3-story glass-fronted entrances, which is part of the 21st design century. We started complaining about them. These magically disappeared from the website. 21st century design, as she said, is on their website, is in their plan. And that is something that we should not be experimenting with in McAllen. And I'm not making this up. I'm just watching their videos, and I'm exploring the philosophy of the fellow that's featured on their videos, the so-called 21st century building expert. These are the people using the terms. They're using 21st century, open, engaging, teachers have a new role, drastically changing. It was on the video, drastically changing our classrooms. We are not ready for that new style. If you look on the video, the title of it is the video highlighting a 21st century learning center, the third teacher. They're saying that the building is the third teacher. Mark's in my position is that the teacher needs to be the teacher.
Okay, closing statement now from the pro bond issue side.
If you've heard any of the presentations around town, you might have heard Dr. Ponce say that our school district is the backbone of our community, because our school district employs more people than any other industry, and we educate 90% of McAllen's children. It is the backbone, but I also believe that it is the heart of our city. And a heart can keep on pumping even when it has major problems. You can do quick fixes, you can do angioplasties and stents, but eventually you're going to have to start replacing major arteries, or your heart is going to fail. The FFAC did an incredibly thorough job over 18 months. We did not pull numbers out of thin air. We did not investigate these ridiculous philosophies that Mr. Walker is alluding to. We took hard numbers, we looked very closely at what the needs were, and we came up with a plan to address the problem that we have. And I would liken it to a quintuple bypass. It's a big deal, and it is dire, and it's scary. But we have a solution. We're not a bunch of complainers. We are here to offer a solution, to lend a hand to our school district. Surgeons do not operate on their own. They have a team. Our community has to be a team with our school district. They cannot do this without us. Austin is not going to take care of us. We have to take care of our kids. And if we do it, we are going to be whole and healthy again. And we're going to have the brightest future. And we can only do it if we do it together. And so I hope that you will look at the website for what it really says, not what he says it says.
Thank you.
And you will understand that it's what's best for our community.
And, okay, now folks. I would say we had a real debate. Folks, I want to thank you, Danny Gerwitz, Gina Millen, Mark Walker, thank you for answering the questions, for taking the time. And of course, from the other table, Davis Rankin, Monica Stewart, and Chris Artis.
we get everyone seated, please?
Please be seated. Please be seated. And now we come to the final portion of our evening, election issues 2015, and we are very pleased in this to have a product of the McAllen Schools as our moderator. Some of you may know him, some of you may not, but he's one of our McAllen products. And I'm very proud to introduce our moderator, Mark Hanna.
Thank you. All I can say is I'm glad I didn't moderate that last one. I'd like to introduce everyone. Up here, obviously they have their name tags in the front, but starting from left to right, we have Marcus Suarez.
It's Marco Suarez.
Marcus Suarez, I'm sorry. First mistake, thank you. Put that down on my score chart. Next is Enidelia Olivares, is that correct? Dalinda Alcantar, Maricruz Abbott, Conrado Alvarado, Dawn Delaney, Hilda Deschazo, Erica de la Garza, and Tony Corina. Just, I looked up on McAllen ISD's school board, the website, and it said McAllen ISD school board trustees are elected by the citizens of McAllen ISD to be legally responsible for educating the children in the district. So I'd like to just say no pressure, okay? I'd like to start with the first question. This goes to Marcos Suarez. Question 1, are you for the bond? Yes or no? And why or why not?
My answer is or.
Or?
From the very beginning, I have stated, and I've quoted in the paper, that I stand neutral on the bond for 2 reasons. The first of which, I think that we don't want to divide the city. That's the first one. And the second is, because my job as a school board member is not to vote for a bond or against a bond. Remember that I do respect the current board for putting up the bond for a vote, but it's the public that decides on the bond. And what we do is interpret what the bond, what we do is interpret what the citizens vote. And so the question that should be asked is, if the bond passes, why are you the right person for the job? If it doesn't pass, why are you the right person for the job? I think that my business skills and being from a family that has always had a small business, that is an important factor in making those decisions.
Thank you. Ms. Olivares, same question?
Yes, thank you. From the very beginning when I met with the Rotary Club, my answer was no. The bond has been a passionate topic. It has been dissected, evaluated, roasted, toasted, criticized, and God forbid that we would be litigating. I am on bond overdose. I think that we need to get our heads back together. This city is divided, and we want to be able to be together. I don't know whether the bond passing or failing is going to make the children any different or any better at this point. They are still in the classrooms, they are still working, teachers are still struggling, and I think that is where, as well, our focus ought to be on. I fear the future and deeper issues may surface. If this passes, the scrutiny of the cons will intensify, and rightly so. Future divisions, trust will continue to be eroded, relationships possibly damaged. They will be under the microscope to ensure that the money is appropriated as recommended. Should it fail to pass...
Ma'am, that's time. Thank you.
You're missing the 30 seconds.
Oh, it's up.
It's underneath the seat. It's underneath. 1 minute, 15 seconds. Okay,
Thank you. Ms. Alcantara, same question?
So the question that was asked is if we are for or against the bond. And because we're in front of community members, I believe that we do need to take a stand since you will be the one voting for us. And I'm currently against this particular bond package, mainly because after speaking with hundreds of community members that I will hopefully be representing, the majority of them have come out and have said that they are concerned about this particular bond issue and they are not supporting it. And so since I am going to be elected to represent the voice of the community, I will be against the bond, and I've been very vocal about that.
Thank you. Ms. Abbott?
Thank you. So I will take a position and answer the question of whether or not I will be voting for the bond. I personally, as an individual, will be voting for the bond. The bond will pass by who votes for it, and it'll be an individual decision for each and every one of us. The Board of Trustees is not going to decide whether or not this passes. The people at this table will not decide. Each and every one of us will have an opportunity to vote and to say whether or not we wanted to vote. Regardless, however, at the end, we're going to have to come together and address the needs that our facilities have. 40% of our facilities are 40 years old, at least 40 years old. And as a mother of 2 children who have attended McAllen ISD schools that are well over 40, 50, and even 70 years old, yes, I will be voting for the bond, even though, if it passes, it will not benefit my children. It will benefit future students at McAllen ISD. But at the end, we must all come together, work together, regardless of the outcome. But as an individual, I will vote for the bond.
12 years ago, I didn't go to a PTO meeting in Garza, and because I didn't go, my wife nominated me to be the PTO president. And the bond came up during that time, and I was very passionate because we needed to address the growth in the north side. Someone said, well, we don't trust school board, all those other issues, why don't you run? They decided to run. I was lucky enough to be elected, and I served the school board when the bond was passed. Dr. Chapa and Mr. Vela were here, they're part of the team that saw the bond through. There is no doubt we need a bond. There is no doubt we need facilities. But my position is I'm running a campaign, and I see both sides. There's people that are telling me for and against it. And what I want you to understand that if the bond passes, I have the experience to see it through from top level, and if it doesn't, then we got to come back and address our needs. Is that a yes, sir, or no, sir? I'm also on the order side for like my candidate over here, Mr. Slice. Thank you. Mr. Delaney?
At this point, I'm going to vote May 9th, but I am probably not going to vote either way for the bond. And I've heard lots of things both ways. I'm still trying to get facts about them. In fact, today I called Mr. Blum and I called Mrs. Mill and I didn't get answers, so I was able to get a hold of them. But at this point, it looks like it's going to go back to the drawing board. That's what I feel. Because there's lots of things, a lot of facts I think that aren't really resolved yet. So I expect it will go back to the board. And I probably at this point will choose not to vote either way. I will probably just let it play.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Hilda, and from day one, I have never been an or person. I'm your incumbent, and I voted to call for this bond. But as I have said from day one, a vote for me is not a vote for the bond. A vote for me is a vote for an incumbent who has served you for 3.5 years with perfect attendance at meetings, leadership capacities, and dedication. The bond will be decided by you. You are the taxpayer. You will make that decision. You are the taxpayers, and you tell us what to do. The bond will be decided by you. Again, if you vote yes, that's your choice. If you vote no, that's your choice. I am for the bond. But I want you to understand that all I'm asking is that when you go vote for or against, please be informed. Please be a high information voter and vote with information, not just because someone else said this or that about the bond. I am not an or person, I am for the bond. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erica, and I am currently your school board president, and I am and have been from the beginning for this bond. I am for all children of our district. I am for equity across our district, whether it be south side, north side, east side, or west side. And let the comments that were made today about the division in our community not confuse anybody. This division is not created by this bond. This division was created during the dirty politics that have been allowed to go forward in the District 1 race by people who want to make this bond about political gain and personal, progress,
But this bond has always been about the children. It's okay to say that you love kids and are against taxes, and that's fine to say that. But don't try to discredit over 100 people who spent 2 years of their world to research and verify again the numbers that are in this bond. Thank you.
Being the father of 4 kids within the district, 1 in elementary, 1 in middle school, and 2 in high school, having one preparing to go to college, hopefully come back and stay in McAllen, as we don't want to lose that human capital, I'm against this bond. I understand that there is a need. My reason for being against this bond, it's too big. I think there are other ways, there are other measures that can be handled, more creative ways that we can work together as a community and not have a separation of north side, south side, east side, west side. I think that's plain rhetoric. I think each child is capable of learning on their own. There is no such thing as classroom equity because not every teacher and not every student is the same. I think if we're going to invest in our schools, we have to make sure that they're done right and not refurbish, but build new schools that we'll be able to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Forina. We've heard a lot of different dollar figures when it comes to the district's investment in the purchase of iPads. What is the correct amount the district spent, and do you think it was a wise investment? Why or why not?
I don't think the district spent any money. I believe that was part of a grant. And as to if it is a wise or not wise decision, that is based on the parents. Here's what I can tell you. The majority of the citizens in McAllen cannot connect to Wi-Fi because they don't have that service. We're asking these families to spend money on a service that they may not be able to afford because they're on a fixed income. And then, of course, you have students nowadays that have taken the iPad and have bolstered their social media. Thanks to the iPad, I'm now familiar with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we're starting to Periscope through Twitter, which once I find out what it is, I may share it with the community. Snapchat is another one that I'm learning about. But when I ask my kids, what did you do with your iPad today, I get the same look. Nothing.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There was an unfortunate article that wasn't a local newspaper that came out with a $20 million number. There was money, and the money that we've spent was our annual budget. We know from the beginning that it was either we replaced 3 desktops in each classroom, or we were able to put a device in every student's hands. A device that, yes, maybe some students would never have the opportunity to have, and maybe they don't have internet at home, but luckily our city Wi-Fi in areas like this library, in Palmview Community Center, and different areas, these kids are able to access the internet in a world that they would never be able to. So I understand that you have different social media networks, but Mr. Fortina, you're lucky enough to probably have a computer at home too, and you'd probably have those anyway. But our children are learning on these iPads, and it takes only a day to spend with some of these schools and some of these teachers and librarians to see the awards that our children are winning using the iPad and the technology that they have learned, and maybe an opportunity that they may not have had before.
Thank you.
I supported the board's decision to have the iPads. It wasn't about $20 million. We had grants. It was technology money that was already there that was just going to be reused or used in a different manner. I was a classroom teacher. I would have rather had all my students have an iPad than 3 kids at a computer, or 3 computers in the classroom at one time. It's not all about Wi-Fi. Children can go to the school, use their iPads, download what they need for homework and take it home, and then have it at home. It's not about having Wi-Fi at home because they have that at school and they can download the information and take it home. It's about equity. It's about all children being able to use an iPad whether they can afford one or not. Some people say, well, my kids have iPads. Well, you know what? Other kids do not. I know a child who lives in the projects. He loves his iPad because he tells me I can understand the work better, I can download it at school, bring it home, and do my homework at home. Thank you.
I like the iPads, but I think the Wi-Fi situation should have been worked out, first of all. And I would tend to go with the classroom set use of the iPads. rather than have the kids running around the halls doing social media a lot of the day, which is what I've seen at the two high schools I work at. So that's what I would do.
Anybody who knows or knows me as a former board member knows that I will stand by my decision I did, so I stand on my record. As far as the iPads, this is one of the reasons why I'm running. A perfect example, we still don't have the answer how much we spend on iPads. The question has not been answered. And there are issues. If you talk to parents like myself, I have some that don't take it, some that don't even use it. We still are not using it for textbooks. We still have use of lockers, for textbooks. That's still an issue. So iPads is not to where we need to, and we need to push that. And that's what we're not discussing. There's so many other issues. When I got elected last time, I ran on the bond. I sat on my first time I went to the first board meeting. There were so many other issues besides that one bond, and that's what I'm saying. Our test scores are low. We're losing teachers. We're losing students. iPad's not where it needs to be. We need a new voice, and I'm that voice. And by the way, I am an incumbent in a certain effect because I chose not to run because my kids needed me, and they're older now, and I'm ready to serve this community again and bring a new voice. Thank you.
Well, we have the current trustees answering the question of how we paid for it. What I'd like to talk about is the intent of the initiative, and that was to provide every student with the same learning tool. They can all use Pages to write and present a paper and complete an assignment. They can all use Keynote to complete a presentation and make it in class and complete the assignment. I remember a teacher telling me once that she had students that could not complete their homework at home because they didn't have the supplies or the tools at home to complete an assignment. And therefore, they came to school and they didn't have the assignment completed. This is what TLC Cube was meant to do, was to give each child the same learning tool so that every child has the same opportunity to complete an assignment and to do well.
Well, I just want to be clear to the community, as an educational researcher and someone who currently practices education, that there is no study that supports that the tool of an iPad directly correlates to academic achievement. So I want to be really clear about that. Another thing that's important for me to note is that the legislature a few years back, before we implemented the iPads, they actually allowed us to take from the textbook allotment and take it over if we had sufficient research to show that we were going to then put electronic textbooks per se on a device. And so I do know that there wasn't additional monies that were spent on these devices, that we just took our electronic textbooks allotment and we used that. We gutted labs as well. But I want to make mention to this as community members. I want you all to know that the feedback from the majority of teachers saying that they want the district to do something to help them scale back because of safety concerns, because of a lack of real Wi-Fi infrastructure that supports the system. And I think it's very important that we listen to our teachers. You know, we talk about the cadre that they put together. I was currently working, excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do not know the cost at this time as well. One of the board members corrected me at one of our last town halls that $20 million was not what they used, that they were given grants. I did research that. It is correct. However, the district was to be paying on a 5-year period, so I don't know what that means. But I think our school board members are perfectly capable of clarifying that if that continues to be an issue. iPads in the hands of our children is a good thing. It does bring technology to the home. What I have heard from children is that they're not utilizing them for homework and they're not utilizing it for their academics. I understand that our children are using them for social media, Kik, Instagram. A lot of the iPads are broken, and yes, I understand. The school board member told me that they can get fixed. However, the children are not valuing an incredibly expensive technological tool. Teacher training may be required if it needs to be tweaked so that the iPads can be used to the fullest capacity. The test scores.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As a business owner, I always ask myself, if we invest something, do we get the buck back for it? And so if the question is, were they worth it? The number that I've come up with doing some research was $8 million. And unfortunately, the way they were rolled out, I would have not invested it that way. Several reasons. Although it did put the iPads in probably some hands of some kids that would have never had it before, what it did would create some problems within the teachers. Now, I have spoken to several teachers, and their argument is that some of these kids know more about the iPad than they do. I think a better approach would have been to let the teachers have it for a year, let them see how they were going to put it and implement it into the system, and then probably give it to the high school kids, and from there maybe the junior high, and then maybe 5th or 4th grade. But my daughter is a perfect example of someone who got cyberbullied. So the answer to this question, if was the $8 million a wise investment, right now I would have said no.
Thank you. Marco, we'll start with you.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I said Marco. Aside from the bond, what is the biggest challenge that McAllen ISD faces, and what is your solution to that challenge?
That's an excellent question. I think by speaking to community members and speaking to teachers, I think we have a bit of a problem with teacher morale. What is the main issue? I think they feel disconnected. How do we solve that problem? There's not just one solution. You know, we have to come together. We have to be the voice for everyone, for all administration, not just the teachers, but the custodians, the truck drivers, and everyone else. When I first announced, I promised to be a listener. And that's what's been instilled in me, the values that I have as a person and as a business person, is that you have to listen. And those are the needs that you bring back to the board, and you come together and unite the community. There's not one specific answer. There's not one specific solution to solve the problem. The problem is that you have to be transparent, and people have to be able to communicate with you. There is no doubt in my mind, if there's a teacher out there or an administrator or anybody who works for the district, that I will be a listener and I will take what they tell me back to the board.
Thank you. Teacher salaries has been a discussion that we have had in the past in our forums. Teacher morale. Teachers have said to me that the onerous IB curriculum that has come into the schools has also put much more responsibility on them, much more time, much more paperwork. The teachers are dedicated individuals, knowledgeable and competent people who went into this social service, I say, as a teacher myself. They are dedicated people. We need an informed public so they are always aware of what the test scores are, what our accountability is, what the progress is made for at-risk students, the percentage of students opting for associate's degrees. That information does need to be given to the community. And I believe that some of the issues with the district could be, in my opinion, how are we looking at individuals with mental health? That is a passion for me as a counselor. How many of our children are suicidal? How many of our children in drug and alcohol? What is the rise of sexual inappropriateness between a child and a teacher because of poor boundaries on our girls and on our boys? Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to be clear that facilities don't make us a second-rate district, so I want the community to know that. What does make us a second-rate district is low teacher morale, because research indicates that when we have high teacher morale, our academic achievement skyrockets. When you have happy teachers and happy employees and happy administrators, it does affect the academic achievement of our students. We do not become second-rate because of our facilities, so that's one thing that is a pressing issue for me. Another one is the academic programs that we offer here. You know, I want you to go back and do a little investigation. McAllen ISD is one of the only school districts in our region that does not offer UIL academic programs for elementary students. We have students in Region 1 that are competing even at a state and a national level with academic programs. Why are we not investing in these UIL academic programs to give us a sustainable foundation for academic achievement later in our secondary schools? So that's one of the biggest pressing issues for me.
I think one of our greatest challenges is going to be after the vote on this bond. Because if it passes, then we're going to have to come together and work together, both sides of it, to do what we said we were going to do. And if it doesn't pass, then it's back to the drawing board. And I really believe that it's going to be very important to bring everybody into the room. Those that were for it, those that were against it, those that had criticism or just felt a certain way. And so I think that that's going to be not only a challenge, but an opportunity. In my own group of friends that are helping me with this campaign, I have someone on one side of the argument and one on the other. And yet they stay till 11 o'clock at night on Monday night talking about it. And both sides had valuable, input. And I think that at the end, the challenge and the opportunity is going to be to come together to address our aging facilities.
One of the lessons I learned on serving on the board is that you can never be satisfied as a school board member. You always have to push the district. So for me, the biggest issue coming in would be our teachers. There's a lot of teacher discontent, and we have a lot of good teachers, a lot of good stuff happening over here, but we still need to push it. For example, IB planning in elementary, that's one area where they say that they need more time. Starting, salary we discussed, I think the district's done a good job addressing it 0 to 5, but the veteran teachers, the teachers that are 20 years, there's a teacher 20 years told me she's making $52,000. The starting teacher makes $44,000. We got to widen that gap. The iPads, which you talked about, do they need more training? What is it that they need to make that tool more effective? What I'd like to do is come in and do a climate survey. Let the teachers tell us what we needed, what's really going on. Sometimes they tell me, Mr. Alvarado, we really don't put what we really feel in that survey because, well, one, we're afraid, or two, we don't know if they're going to listen. So I think we just need to understand that on school board, we'll always have to push it. We're going to hear negative stuff, and I do want to address the issues with teacher.
I've been with the district 23 years. This is the first time I actually decided to run file. And big issue for me is I've seen a lot of unfairness since I've been with the district. I'm in special ed. A lot of problems in special ed districts, in my opinion. We have no director. Some of the students and parents are not treated very nicely. And I think there's a problem. I think we need someone in charge, someone who's an official director. Also, things like, open enrollment. Everyone's allowed to work to enroll in this district. I have found that's not the truth. Some special ed students are not allowed to be in this district. I found that out today again. So, fairness and speaking the truth, and if something's a fact, it's okay, but it has to be proved it's a fact. We have to find the facts. Thank you.
I think that one of the biggest challenges that all school districts face has to be funding and teacher salaries. Funding because you have to work with a very tight budget and you have to work with whatever the budget is decided on in Austin. Teacher salaries because everyone is concerned about teacher salaries. That is why when I sit on the Legislative Action Committee as part of TASB in Austin, I work very, very hard to make teacher salaries in the top 10 priorities. Before that, the teacher salaries were not even part of the top 10 priorities across the state. My committee and I sat and looked at this, we argued, we debated, we persuaded, because we felt it was very important that teacher salaries be addressed by the legislators. The Legislative Action Committee, of which I am a part, makes legislative recommendations to the legislatures, and that's why I fought very hard to make sure that teacher salaries were in the top 10% or the top 10 priorities in the state of Texas. Thank you.
I agree. I think that we have a huge issue here in McAllen that maybe a lot of our residents aren't aware of, and that's the state funding issue that we have. Not only for our district, but just the difference that we have in the state and then the difference that we have in Region 1. It was brought up earlier that we get about $5,500 per student in the seat, when we know that some of our neighbors up in North Texas get up to $8,000. This legislature has told us that they would offer McAllen another $100 per student, which doesn't remedy the past 20 years of us being underfunded. And so we know that we have limited resources and revenues when it comes to teacher salaries, even compared to our neighbors who receive more funding than us. So it's important that our community is aware of these issues. And, as Mr. Richard Cortez mentioned earlier, this city has sales tax, tolls, fines and fees, hotel revenues that they can pick in different revenues from to increase, but the school districts only have one source of revenue.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think what we need to do is take care of our teachers. My mom taught for over 2 decades at a neighboring district, PSJA, and said that when she was done having fun, she was done teaching. When her principal came up to her and said, here's your lesson plan for the upcoming year, you've got to learn it, you've got to love it, because you're going to be living it. That's when my mom decided it was time to retire. I think our teachers in the McAllen district are undercompensated at whatever range they start. We cannot put a value on what we're entrusting these teachers to do for our children and for our community. There's got to be a way, and there is a way. That is with the TRE, taking some of that money that should have been proposed first, followed by the bond, and then we can work with the state and find an amicable solution to make sure that our teachers are some of the best taken care of here.
Thank you. We're almost out of time. We're going to go ahead and do a wrap up. So everyone's going to get 1 minute to sum up and sell the crowd on why they you should get their vote. We're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Podina.
I am someone who's coming to the table with no experience. I am that person that has gone out and researched. This wasn't a wild hair that I got one day and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to cast my vote and I'm going to put my name in to be a school board member. I know the responsibilities of the school board members. They are to respond to the community. And I don't know if that has been happening quite to the percentages that we're all looking for. You are entrusted to take care of the schools, you are entrusted to take care of the students and do what's best, even if that goes against your opinion. I want to be your ears, I want to be your voice, and I want to represent McAllen ISD Place 4. My name is Tony Podina, and I thank you for your time. I thank Leadership McAllen Alumni and Futuro McAllen for having us here this evening.
I too want to start off by thanking everybody for coming tonight. I know it's a busy night and tonight was a pretty intense forum that we had, but I am here to speak on behalf of leadership. My name is Erica de la Garza. I am a born and raised McAllen resident. My parents are small business owners here in the community. I graduated from Memorial High School. I have a bachelor's from Texas A&M University and a master's from Texas Pan American in business administration, and I have the experience on your board. I have the experience in the workforce, and I have the experience to understand the details in the $200 million budget that this board is responsible for. I have been responsive to teachers, and as a board we have worked together to provide what we can with the resources that our taxpayers have entrusted us to do to provide for those teachers, whether it be an example of a health care benefit over the month of December that would help them out between $100 to $1,000 discount off their insurance payments so that it helped them out with their Christmas expenses. It's important to know that there are people on this board that know what's going on and have the education to handle such a huge, huge budget.
Thank you. My name is Hilda, and I am your incumbent. The dictionary defines an incumbent as a person who holds an office, not a person who held an office. I'm coming to you tonight to let you know that I am running on leadership, experience, and dedication. I have had the leadership as being board president, board vice president, board secretary, and there is something about being a leader in a position like this. I also have the experience. I taught for 17 years, I was an administrator for 16 years, and I have been on the school board for 3.5 years. That's 36.5 years of public school experience. Public school experience, not boardroom experience. I also have the dedication. I have perfect attendance, and there is something about being perfect attendance. Some critics in the past have said they ousted incumbents because they wouldn't show up to meetings. They weren't visible. Well, guess what? I have perfect attendance. I am very visible. I have attended numerous events, and I will continue to do so because of my dedication, my leadership, and my experience, and because I am retired, I have the time. Thank you.
Well, if I get on the board, my name is Don Delaney. Most of you probably don't know me. I've been a teacher, as I say, a long time. If I get on the board, I'm going to try to get at the facts. I'm going to try to avoid politics. I'm going to try to avoid all the people who are going to try to tell me what to do. I'm not going to be told what to do if I'm on the board. It's going to be contentious because I'm kind of rude sometimes. And I'm not like, I've been to board meetings. It would be different if I was on the board, especially if they try to tell me what to do. I ran a suicide hotline in Chicago. I have experience in publishing. I've done a few things outside of education. I'd be different if I was on the board, be a little different approach. So, that's, thank you.
Thank you. I know McAllen ISD. I went to school here. I went to Lincoln, Rayburn, Milan, graduated from Memorial, grew up with Bulldog because my mom taught there for 38 years. After graduating, went away and went into the military and learned leadership there. I came back, raised my family, and raised my family right now. They go to row. I know McAllen ISD. You know that I know McAllen ISD. You see me coaching. You see me serving boards. And yes, I was on board, and my point was I came off because I needed to be a full-time dad. So the difference in this race is do you want someone that knows McAllen ISD, is not going to be an awesome, is going to be here to understand the issues, that is going to be understand that there are problems with our fields, that our fine arts, we're losing teachers to neighboring school districts, that our iPads are not what they need to be? Are we going to, do you want someone that's vested like myself that's going to push this and try to make, and put McAllen where it used to be, the premier school? We're not that far off. We just need someone to come in and it's going to stand the ground and voice and ask questions, and I'm that guy. Thank you.
I've been a community volunteer for over 20 years with different organizations focusing on the children and youth of our community. I've been involved with my children's school PTOs at the elementary school level, the middle school level, and the high school level. And I've been part of a team of community and business leaders that launched the new McAllen Education Foundation, providing support for the teachers and students of McAllen ISD. As a mother of 2 children who have been attending McAllen ISD, I would bring the experiences of a parent of children who have gone through elementary, middle school, and high school. As a parent and community volunteer, I would bring the experiences of working on several teams with parents, teachers, administrators, and community members. Serving the students and the teachers of our school district is what I've been doing for several years, and I don't mean to say that it is my passion because I have demonstrated that it truly is my passion. I'm Mari Cruz del Villar Abbott, and I would be honored if you would vote for me for McAllen School Board Place 1, and I thank you for your time this evening.
My name is Dalinda Gonzalez Alcantar, and I'm asking for your support and your vote because I know that I am the most qualified candidate. For almost 10 years, I have practiced education in either classrooms in Central Texas or down here in the Valley. I have educational policy experience. I interned at the Capitol in Austin, and I was able to sit in, especially in learning about school finance and the funding that people have been talking about. I can also tell you that you will find nobody else that is more passionate about creating opportunities for students and for families in McAllen through education. I've always been in a relentless pursuit to give students and to give our families that look to our education system to provide for them some of what their own homes cannot provide, but also be mindful of our high achievers and those that come from homes where they have degreed parents, and also offer them something that they need, such as an IB program at the high school level. I am here for our community. I have served our community through various boards. I am also a small business owner that has national recognition for my involvement in computer science. I ask for your support. My name is Dalinda Gonzalez Alcantar. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank Futuro McAllen as well as the Leadership Alumni Association for having me here. I would also like to thank Marco Suarez and Mari Cruz and Dalinda. They have been incredible on this platform, and I am so grateful for them. I would like to let you know that I want your vote because I bring the voice of experience after 33 years of teaching. My passion in my first life was developmental disabilities. I graduated from Pan American University in 1971, and don't everybody laugh, please. I went to the University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I earned my master's degree in educational psychology. It was at that time that I created another passion, and that is working with mental health. That is my passion now. I believe that we as school board members have that responsibility, is to take care of the mental health and mental wellness of our children and of our parents. I see them in my office as clients. They are people who really need help, and especially help for their children. I would like to also thank you for allowing me to speak to you candidly. I bring the voice of consensus and accord to the decision-making process. I will only be one of 7. However, despite the differences, we have to come together in decision-making with collaboration and cooperation.
So one thing's for sure, that I'm not the prettiest candidate here, but I am the most well-rounded. Too many burgers, probably. But I will tell you this. I'm a son of some business owners, and I grew up in downtown McAllen working Saturdays instead of watching cartoons. What I bring to the board is someone who knows business. And although I'm not an educator, I think a business approach is what makes a board complete. I think it might be the missing puzzle that the board needs to look at things and to evaluate things. I don't have the answer to everything, and I've never said I do, but I'm a great listener. God gave me these big ears for a reason, as my mom told me. She always said, listen before you make a decision, and I think that holds true. I am here today for the same reason that everyone else is, because we have a passion for kids and for the community. I walked in 2 years ago into an empty PTO room, and guess who became president? No doubt I wish I would have been like Mr. Vela, the only candidate here, but unfortunately I'm not. I respectfully ask for your vote, Marco Suarez for place 1. Thank you very much.